Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Sammy. We are 4 days away from the next major content drop for Path of Exile 2, the Third Edict. And 4 days ago, content creator Destin sat down with Jonathan Rogers to talk about the Third Edict, the patch notes, and a bunch of other stuff. But during that interview, and by the way, I will link the full video and interview in the description of this video so you can watch it in its full entirety. It's a really good interview. I suggest you go check it out and support Destin. But anyway, during that interview, the discussion led to basically Destin asking Jonathan Rogers, what are your requirements that you're going to need to hit in order to come out of early access? Well, Jonathan answered that question, and with that information in hand, I thought I'd create a video on my predictions for when Path of Exile 2 will be getting out of early access. So before I get into my prediction and timelines, let's watch the clip at that exact point when Destin asked Jonathan Rogers about the Path of Exile 2 early access and full release timeline. Here it is.
Now I'm curious to hear from you. What additional items do you feel need to be in place before you're going to be confident enough to launch? I know we sort of talked about it already, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Like, I'm not trying to pressure you on launch or anything like that. I'm more curious about the development cycle. I'm curious as a developer what that roadmap looks like for you, where you're like, okay, now we're ready.
Right. So obviously the campaign has to be done, right? That's like, just goes without saying. But the other part just has to be that we have to get to a point where people generally agree that the game is good and solid and that they are willing to play it again multiple times and that kind of thing, right? So we have to be we have to trust that, because until we've got to that point, I don't want to launch into whatever negativity might come. So negativity might come that way because we really don't want to ruin the full release. And so what that means is effectively I'd have to have a release where people like it, and then I have to have another release after that where people also like that. And if that happens, we know that we don't have this problem where a bunch of negativity is hiding under the positivity, if you know what I mean. So we've definitely fixed all the problems that were a problem for the last one before that. So I'm certain now that it won't be December, right? Like I thought maybe it could be, but I'm certain now it won't be that. Might be the one after that. That's what I really, really hope to. I want to get this done as soon as I can. I really don't want this to go on for years. I'm hoping it'll be the one after that, but we'll see. But the first thing is get it to a place where everyone's actually happy, and solve people's problems, fix all the issues. As I said, we hopefully are going a long way with this one, but we'll see how things go.
You said not this December, the one after that. So December 2026 is...
No, not the December after that. I mean the release after that.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're releasing every 4 months. So that'd be March, I guess. For the release after that. So it could be March. The next one after that would be potentially August. So these are the different. Since we're releasing every 4 months and we know exactly what month it is in, people will know it's one of these dates. They just don't know which one it will be. And honestly, we don't know either, right? It's going to come down to how things go with the releases, how people receive them, and so on.
Okay, so there's a couple of things that came out of that clip. Specifically, originally Jonathan was hoping 2025 was going to be the date for early access into full release. And as you heard on that clip, it does not look like 2025, the end of 2025 is going to be realistic, or is it possible anymore? So we now know that 2025 will not be the year that POE 2 comes out of early access. And Jonathan mentioned that he wanted to get 2 or 3 content drops under his belt that were, and I'm paraphrasing, W's, wins, where there wasn't a lot of issues, underlying issues, and that they were kind of moving forward with the balancing and everything all like that. And once that was achieved, then he could realistically say, okay, let's get out of early access into full release. So with that in tow, I'm going to give you my predictions on what I perceive or what I believe are going to be the timelines and when we're going to get out of early access. Now, behind me, This is point 3. This is the Third Edict. This is what's happening in 4 days. There's a lot of content here. As you can see, we're getting a new act with 3 new interludes, which replace Cruel. There's the new league, which was announced, and that is the Rise of the Abyssal League. So we're familiar with the fact that there's a new league and there's new crafting system and new bosses and all kinds of stuff that comes with the new league content. And of course, across the board, there's all classes. According to this major rebalancing, everything got buffed. Now, I say that with a grain of salt because while I'm recording this video, there's a lot of debate on what's happening with the so-called major rebalance. Some people are taking it positively, and some people are really knocking it down and going line by line, class by class on, hey, this actually isn't, classes aren't getting buffed, they're actually getting hammered. Now, that's speculation because at the end of the day, we don't know 100% of everything that's going on. As a matter of fact, I literally just tweeted to Grinding Gear Games that we need the passive skill tree. A lot of us rely on the passive skill tree, and it's a new passive skill tree that's coming in point 3, the Third Edict. A lot of us rely on that not only to create our league starters, but to make content. And at the end of the day, most of the player base needs to know what the skills are, what the passive skill trees are. So there's still information that we don't have. We don't know everything. So how people can get quick to judgment on whether it's negative or positive is beyond me. Now, of course, everyone can have their speculation and they're entitled to that, but I'm going to reserve mine until we actually have all the information. But point 3 has been marketed and communicated that there's major rebalancing happening. And there's also a new support gem system, which again, this is not to summarize point 3 and the content that's coming. There's the asynchronous trade that's coming that is going to hopefully be very, very positive. And there's a little, what I would classify a little update to the end game encounters. And there's a bunch of crafting changes and many more things. So there's a lot coming this Friday, and the point of this video is to discuss the timelines. Now, if any of you have watched any prior videos of mine, I have done these potential leak timeframes, both for Path of Exile 1 and for Path of Exile 2. And I have to say, I kind of reviewed what I have predicted in the past, and it's pretty well almost been bang on. Actually, I think it has been bang on. But the point of this video, I don't want to talk about Path of Exile 1. I want to talk about Path of Exile 2. So you may or may not be familiar with this little spreadsheet of mine, if you want to call that. But this is the potential time frame. And I want you to concentrate not on Path of Exile 1, which is the top bracket, but the bottom bracket, which is Path of Exile 2. So, as we know, August 29th, Third Edict is going to launch the Rise of the Abyssal League, and that is going to happen on August 29th. And we already know that Grinding Gear Games has committed to a 2-month cadence. So we're going to get a Path of Exile 1 league. 2 months after that, we're going to get a POE 2 league. 2 months after that, we're going to get another new POE 1 league. They are committed to that timeline. They are not going to jeopardize that 2-month cadence for content anymore. That's how they did things in the past. They're not doing it anymore. What they're going to do is, if they can't deliver the content, they're just going to put the content that they can't get ready for the 2-month cadence. They're going to put it on the shelf, and they'll get to it for the next update. So we're pretty solid, according to what Grinding Gear Games has told us, that every 4 months, these leagues are happening, 2 months cadence in between them, okay? So if you take that into consideration and what we just heard from Destin's question to Jonathan, where he would like 2 to 3 good content drops where there's not a lot of waves, there's not a lot of underlying issues, the balancing is getting there and really good, and the end game is there. When he gets two of those under his belt, he now can start thinking about getting out of early access. So he also said 2025 is basically out of the question. So we know it's not happening at the end of this year, which was a prior goal. So we got the Third Edict that's launching in August, which means that'll run to November. Okay? So I'm going to assume, I'm a glasses half full kind of guy, that the Third Edict is going to be a positive one. I think people are going to like the trade. I think people are going to be kind of there and here when it comes to the class balance. But again, that's speculation. But I still think there's going to be enough meat on the bone with what they're doing that overwhelmingly, I think people are going to appreciate it. They're going to want more and better. But again, that's something that you can build off of, okay? Much better than what it was in point two. I honestly do believe it is. So I think the Third Edict is going to be a, for the lack of a better term, a W. So that's one under their belt, okay? And then we get to 0.4, which is going to launch sometime in December, and that's going to run till March. Now, we don't know what's coming, but I am going to get into my speculation on what 0.4, 0.5, etc., is going to contain. I'm going to get into my theory on how things are going to roll out here. So we get into the 0.4, and let's, again, this is a huge assumption. I could be completely wrong. Let's assume 0.4 is good, okay? Then we get into April, which is 0.5, okay? Now, this is a breaking point under Jonathan's formula, where if I get two good content drops under my belt that are perceived and received well, I can start thinking about getting out of early access. But the reason why I am not predicting that it's going to be April is because I think they are not going to hit the mark 100% with the next two drops, 0.3 and 0.4. And when I get into the specifics of what the content is going to entail, according to my speculation, I hope it'll make better sense. So I'm predicting that 0.5 will run till July, and then either 0.6 is going to happen in August, or we are going to get 1.0. In other words, Path of Exile 2's early access will end, and 1.0 and the full release of the game will happen in August. Okay, that is my prediction. I'm predicting August 2026 is going to be 1.0 full release of Path of Exile 2. That is the earliest that it's going to happen. Now, again, this is my prediction, so only time will tell. Okay, so how did I come to this rationale? Not just with what we heard Jonathan say and explain that he wants at least two good content drops under his belt before considering releasing Path of Exile 2. There's also some other logic that we can apply. And we'll go to the next page. And this is my speculation. Again, guys, this is all speculation on my part. So we know what 0.3 already entails. And more importantly, what it doesn't entail and what everybody really is upset about. And that is the fact we didn't get a new class. And really, when you're looking at the dotting the I's and crossing the T's on 0.3, the end game did get new maps and a lot of changes, but there still are a lot of question marks when it comes to the end game. It still needs a lot of fixing. And it's my theory that 0.4 is going to be the end game content drop, amongst other things. And that's not just my opinion. There's also fact out there from other interviews that support that theory. So to me, we already know that 0.4 is going to happen in December 2025. We are almost guaranteed, if not guaranteed, the Druid will be coming. That has come out in other interviews, and they've already said that they thought that they would be able to get the Druid in 0.3. And halfway through the 4-month development of 0.3, they realized they couldn't happen. So they shelved it to get all the other stuff done. So for sure, in my humble opinion, we're getting a new class, Druid. I really don't think we're going to be getting another class. I hope I'm wrong, but I really think, and I say that because their focus on 0.4 is the fact that they need to fix the end game, and that is a big haul. So we're going to get a new class in 0.4, the Druid. We're going to get a major end game rehaul. So basically a new end game. Now, whether they're going to stick to their guns on the waystones and how that all works, even though there's a ton of updates and changes to that in 0.3, I have no idea. Grinding Gear Games can go in a couple of directions here, and they know what they're doing. So I have full trust in them that they're going to do whatever they believe is right. But at the end of the day, 0.4 in some way or form is going to have a major endgame update. I personally think 0.4, of course, the Druid is going to be popular, but everyone's going to be looking to see what's happening with the changes to the endgame. Obviously, with every new content drop now, there's going to be a new league announcement. In 0.3, it's the Abyssal League, Rise of the Abyssal League. 0.4 is going to be no different. It's going to have a new league, so we'll get that announcement. And of course, with every content drop, they're always going to sprinkle and tweak and fix minor, major things across the board. That is class balance, gems, skills, crafting, etc., etc. Every content update, it's part of the process. It's par for the course, that this is just part of developing a game. You're always fine-tuning and tweaking these kind of things, okay? So that's going to happen in 0.4. Now, we get to 0.5, which happens April 2026. And I suspect and suggest that we are going to get another class. Now, there are remaining, if the Druid gets dropped on 0.4, which that's going to happen, we still have the Marauder, the Duelist, the Shadow, and the Templar. So we have 4 more. So if they introduce Druid in 0.4, that is a total of 8 classes in the game now. And there's 4 more to go. Now, which one of these 4 gets introduced? I don't know, but I'm suggesting they are going to introduce one of them. Ideally, I would like to see 2 new classes in 0.5. This way, there's only a couple of classes left before they get out of early access. But we already know that wish has changed from Jonathan's perspective. He originally wanted all classes in before we get out of early access, but he changed his tune a while back ago and saying, necessarily, I could see us getting out of early access and not having all the classes in the game when we get to 1.0. So again, 0.5 is going to have a new class. Acts 5 and 6 are going to get introduced, and the interludes that we have in 0.3 all the way up to 0.5 are now going to go away. Remember, the interludes currently in 0.3 are fixtures. They're placeholders for Acts 5 and 6. That is going to go away. The interludes are when Acts 5 and 6 get introduced. So I suggest 0.5 is going to introduce Acts 5 and 6 in April of 2026. Therefore, the interludes are removed from the game. And, of course, new league announcement. And, of course, they're going to continue with class balance, craft improvements, etc. That also is going to, they now would have had 4 months of the new end game content. So that also comes into play. They'll probably tweak that. And I also suggest, and I didn't write it down here, is that we are going to get the 3rd trial of ascendancy starting on 0.5. Basically, they are setting up the game and testing the game almost at full potential. Of course, we're still missing classes. We're still missing a lot of the ascendancies, which Again, I forgot to mention this on all that, but from 0.4, 0.5, I also suggest between those two content drops, each one will contain some new ascendancies that they're going to add, the ones that are missing. I forgot to mention that and actually put this on that, but that's going to come. And the new trials, the third and last one, will be included in 0.5. So we now have 0.3, 0.4, and 0.5. That's 3 content drops. And I am sticking with my date of 1.0 because I suggest of the 3 content drops, a minimum of 2 of them are going to be perceived and taken well. And therefore giving Grinding Gear Games, as per Jonathan in that interview, giving him the confidence that looks like the foundation is set. I think we're set to move forward with 1.0. So I think it gives wiggle room for them to even have a hiccup between 0.3, 0.4, and 0.5, and yet still get 2 good ones under their belt. And that takes us to August 2026, potentially 1.0, getting out of early access and launching this game in full release mode, opening it up to the masses. We're going to have a little glimpse of what the potential player base could be because Grinding Gear Games is offering a free weekend, August 29th to September 1st in the Third Edict. So we're going to get a little taste of how many players outside of who's playing it now with keys. We're going to get a little taste of that this weekend. Who knows? We may get a big taste of it, but we're coming out of early access, August 2026. That's my prediction. Obviously, come August 26th, when we're 1.0, part of that content drop, not only is it now 1.0, we're going to get a new class. So there'll be 3 left. I suggest they're going to add another one, leaving 2 classes still to be dropped and added to the game, even when it comes out initially in full release. The end game, again, the end game will always continue to be tweaked. Of course, with 1.0, it's a new league, so there's going to be a new league announcement. And as always, they're going to continue tweaking and balancing everything in the game and fine-tuning it. But by August 2026, we should have everything in the game except for a couple of classes and on our way to hopefully having a solid foundation of a game. And of course, I stutter to even attempt to justify this, but really, is an ARPG from a class perspective ever fully balanced? You know, we had this discussion on one of my live streams the other night. I think it was last week. Developers are constantly balancing classes and skills in ARPGs. So I don't think that's ever going to go away. Ideally, what you want is like only 10 or 15% of tweaking. You don't want, you know, the other way around where the game is so out of balance that you're trying to balance 80, 85% of the classes and the skills. So hopefully we're in that scenario and this game launches on a solid foundation and Grinding Gear Games is humming along. And then really it's a matter of just continuing. I think too, to be honest with you, once 1.0 comes in, I think this is when we're going to start really seeing new content that is not kind of linked or tied to Path of Exile 1. And, you know, they're grabbing that stuff and they're changing it and making it for Path of Exile 2 and unique to Path of Exile 2. So it's not like copy and paste. But they are leaning on Path of Exile 1 content, per se, to give us what we have so far in POE 2. I think that methodology changes when we hit 1.0. I think you're going to start seeing advancements, innovation into Path of Exile 2, unique to Path of Exile 2, because I truly believe Grinding Gear Games wants Path of Exile 2 and Path of Exile 1 to be different games of each other. And really, they are already. But there are linkages between the two, solid linkages. All right, so that's my timeline. I'm sticking to August 2026. I think that's when we're going to get out of early access. Now, take that with a grain of salt. Obviously, if 0.3, 0.4, and 0.5, according to my timeline, if two of those three are deadbeats and they don't hit the mark, then we are going into 2027 for a release for 1.0 in Path of Exile 2. I really don't think that's going to be the case. If you watch the Destin interview, Jonathan really said that he does not want to drag this out. He really wants to get into full release. Obviously, he's not going to rush there. He wants things to be right, but he does want to not turn this into years. And I'm talking about the early access. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Let me know what you think. What do you think? Do you think it's going to be earlier? Do you think it could potentially be April of 2026 and they do 0.3, 0.4, and then 0.5 is 1.0, and we're now launching into full access on April 2026? Or do you think this is going to be 2027? I know some of you think it's going to be 2028, 2029. Get in the comment section, let me know. And if you could, please back up your opinion and state why. And telling me Grinding Gear Games doesn't know what they're doing isn't really an argument. Of course, you can have that opinion, but I'd like you to kind of put some meat on the bone and justifying your opinion, kind of like the work that I've done here. Anyway, let me know your comments. I would love to hear them. And as always, if you're looking for Path of Exile 2 and Path of Exile 1 content, this is the place. My name is SamyCaps. I go by Sammy. I also live stream on Twitch. Channel name is SamyCaps. And if you can like, comment, and subscribe to my content, I would really appreciate the support of my work. It would mean the world to me. Anyway, thank you for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time. Take care. The opinions expressed in this video are mine and solely mine. Healthy debate is always encouraged. Hate is never welcomed. So get over it.